the one, the only, Todd McFarlane! And the one and only, the reason for the season, the man himself, Stan!
Stan Lee when I grow up.
I have a complaint to register. First of all, when I walked in, I thought I saw an empty chair. I don't speak to half-filled audiences. But it's okay, there's somebody there. The other thing is, I thought we'd have a nice, quiet, intelligent chat. Just the three of us, you, Claire, and me. All of a sudden, I find out we have a stowaway aboard. I didn't know he was going to be here. I got a guy younger, better looking, more talented, more famous. I'm leaving. Hell, who needs it?
Hey, so let me say something. I've had more than one time the privilege to be up here on stage with Mr. Stan Lee. Here's my take. Besides I love this man. He's an anomaly. Most people, Stan, do not hit the apex of their career at 94. So most people go, we're going to make a career and then we're going to come down. Here's what I believe Stan Lee is to me, and I think to a lot of other guys. Stan Lee is a national treasure, ladies and gentlemen.
I agree.
And here's why I say it. Here's why I say it. I think you can almost count on hands the number of people that have made an impact on people's lives in the world. Not here in America, in the world, right? So I look at, as much as we've had a good run at Image and some of us artists and some of the people who stood in line, none of us have been able to dent the planet, right? And Stan Lee, with his characters, whether you know him personally or you just know his characters, this man has touched the planet, and I hope he gives us another 15 years and he goes out on top at 110. But let's just get straight to the question that's on everybody's mind. Is your favorite character in comic books Spawn or Spawn?
It's a good question.
Yeah, it's an easy answer right now.
I gotta make a confession. Even though I know I look like a model of physical perfection, my hearing is not what it used to be. And the funny thing is, I can hear this guy fine when he talks, but when he talks into the microphone, it sounds to me like, so I don't know what the hell he's talking about. So if you want me to answer you, put the idiot microphone down, talk loud enough for them to hear you, and I'll know what you're saying. Otherwise, Claire and I are gonna have a lovely time here, and you can do whatever it is you do. I'm not easy. I should have warned you about that.
All right, so let's talk about the cameos. I have a kid that's staying with me from Germany. When I said I know Stan Lee, he goes, I don't know who that is. And then I showed him a picture.
He said, what?
Yes.
Who is this person?
From Germany, Berlin. And then I said, here, I'll show you a picture on Google. And the moment I showed him Stan's picture, he went, I know that guy. He's He's in all the movies. So you're famous. So let's talk about the cameos. How did the cameos come about? How did the cameos come about? Because the guys in Germany know you from that, right?
The people in Hollywood realize how much audiences love me, but I don't have time to star in the movies, which breaks their heart. They keep begging me, why can't you play Iron Man? Why can't you be Wolverine? And I tell them, really guys, I'd love to, but I have other things to do. So, tearfully, they said, what if we give you just a little role, just so that the public gets a taste of you because you're so wonderful. And I couldn't argue with that. So we decided on these, what do you call them, cameos?
Cameos.
I really call them supporting, starring roles, but we all have our own names for them. And somehow or other, I seem to have made a career out of this. All of a sudden, instead of saying, there's that wonderful writer who has given the world so much in literature, people say, oh yeah, that's that cameo guy, and they walk away. So I'm not happy about that.
But you recently shot about 5 of them, right? And you can't tell us about it. So
I'm not allowed to talk. I can't tell what they are. These are the most closely guarded secrets since D-Day. Really, if anybody ever found out what one of these cameos were, what would happen is they'd figure, well, there's no sense going to the movie. I know what his cameo is, and we all know that's the only reason they go to the movie. I love these people.
Todd, I think we should talk about Spider-Man.
let's talk about Spider-Man.
Oh, sure, great. This is the guy who wrote and drew one Spider-Man issue that sold more copies of Spider-Man than any other issue. I hate him so.
Sadly, I was just trying to emulate what you were doing, only better.
I'm not doing so badly. I have 2 translators, and one of them is pretty. Are we finished? We go now.
No, talk to us about Spider-Man. Talk about the invention of Spider-Man with Jack Kirby coming on and doing the artwork and giving the costume.
Jack Kirby didn't do Spider-Man.
Steve Ditko.
Oh, you know all about this. You want me to tell them? But what if they already know? Then I'll bore them. Do you want to know the intimate secrets about the creation of Spidey?
Oh, wow.
This had better be good, too.
See, he interrupts. That's what I hate about this man. He interrupted me. I was just starting. I was getting them in the mood. You see, with me, it's like a symphony. The music has to start slowly, and then it has to engage you. If you come in and say something, you lose the whole rhythm of the thing. Will you sit over there? Now, I love this band, but I have no taste. So anyway, we had done pretty well with the Fantastic Four, and we did well with whatever the hell, X-Men or whatever the next book was. And my publisher said to me, hey, come up with another superhero. Well, I was working for him, so that was an order. So I was trying to think of something unique. And I sat around in my room and I saw a fly crawling on the wall. And I thought, boy, wouldn't it be cool to have a superhero who could stick to walls like a... No, I'm not telling you the truth. I just realized that was years ago, and they didn't have the word cool. I probably said, wouldn't it be groovy to have a character who could walk on walls? So I thought that was a good idea. So then I needed a name. So, okay, Flyman, nah. Mosquito Man, and I went down the list. And then I got to Spider-Man. Oh, it sounded so dramatic. And then I figured I'm gonna make him a teenager, because that'll be different. There are no real teenage superheroes. And I'll give him a lot of personal problems. Oh, I was getting excited about this. So I ran into my publisher, and I told him what I just told you. And he said in words that will live in infamy, he said, "That is the dumbest idea I have ever heard." He said, "You can't call a character Spider-Man because people hate spiders. You can't have him be a teenager. A teenager can only be a sidekick. And you want him to have personal problems? Stan, don't you know what a superhero is? He did all but kick me out of the office." Well, we had a book called Amazing Fantasy.
Fantasy, yeah.
See why I keep him around? It's called Amazing Fantasy. And we were going to publish the last issue. Now, when you do the last issue of a book, nobody cares what you put in it. The book is dying anyway. So to get it out of my system, I said, I'm going to put Spider-Man in that book. And I called Jack Kirby, who at that time was the guy I went to for everything. And I asked him to draw Peter Parker, make him just an ordinary kid and so forth. And he drew a page that was beautiful, but I didn't feel he had Peter Parker. See, Jack makes everything look heroic. He made Peter Parker look like Captain America. So I figured, hell, we'll go somewhere else. And I went to Steve Ditko, who draws things that are a little more realistic in that sense. And I asked Steve to do Peter Parker, and he did, and I liked it. And I had Steve do a whole 20-page story, and we featured it in Amazing Fantasy and put it on the cover. And I forgot about it. A month later, after the sales figures were in, my publisher came running into my office and said, Stan, do you remember that character of yours, Spider-Man, that we both liked so much? My publisher. And he said, let's make a series, because he had gotten the sales figures and it was the best-selling book of the month. So that's how Spider-Man was born. And if you had known it was going to be such a long story, you wouldn't have asked me to tell it.
Now, most of you don't know, maybe you do. Back when we were drawing, even just before I got into the business, everything was based in New York, right? Marvel, DC, everything was in New York. Everybody lived in New York. Everybody worked in New York. And it was almost incestuous that we were there. Nobody had made the move to the West Coast. And then, all of a sudden, I hear one day, Stan Lee is moving to California. So, tell us how you were able to get out of the bubble of New York City and get out into the sunshine of California when everything was in New York. Did you hear?
I heard it.
Okay.
I thought that we were doing this together, but you're acting like just the guy who's interviewing me.
Yeah.
Why aren't we also talking about you and your career and everything?
Because this is a Stan Lee panel. Let's have it. Hold on. Let's do it. You guys can break my heart. I don't care. I love me. Who loves me? Stan, give me a clap. Who gives a shit about the Canadian? They're here for Stan Lee. I'll wedge myself in. Don't worry about it. You go. California, go.
This man knows how to play an audience. I take notes whenever I'm with him. All right, anyway. We had a company that was doing animated cartoons of some of our characters. And at one point I said to the people running Marvel, why don't we do our own cartoons? Why do we have somebody else doing them? We could do it better. And they said, well, we don't have a cartoon studio. And I had been to Los Angeles a month or so before. and I drove down Sunset Boulevard, and it was a gorgeous sunny day, and the palm trees were swaying, and the women were wearing summery dresses, and everything was so beautiful. I said, I'd like to live here. So when I addressed the group at Marvel, I said, you know, we should have our own animated company out in Los Angeles, and I will make the supreme sacrifice. I will uproot my family and move out to Los Angeles to set up an animation studio. Well, there wasn't a dry eye in the place. They said, Stan, you would do that for us? And I said, yes. So they moved me out to Los Angeles, and we set up a TV studio, and I've been there ever since. The people in Los Angeles still haven't found a way to get rid of me, and that's it, why I'm there. I wish it was the funniest story. If you ask me to tell a story, think of something that's funny so I don't lose the audience. Half of them have already got nothing left. I want you to know that. They're leaving while I'm watching them. They're parading out the door.
Stan, can you tell us a funny story?
I don't know any, but you're very funny. Do you know any funny stories?
I have a few funny stories.
All right, here we go.
Nobody wants to hear my funny stories. They want to hear your funny stories.
I could hear yours, and then I could pretend it's mine, and then I could tell it. I shouldn't think of any funny stories. I'm not a very funny person. I'm a very serious. Well, you realize that
Okay,
by now.
so let's.
I'm a very serious, sober person. Why did you almost interrupt me? You notice he does that. The minute he thinks I'm on a roll, he interrupts me. All right, that's the way he is. You have to love your friends with all their faults.
So Stan, I have a question for you then. If we're gonna get serious, because you're a writer, so let's get serious. Explain to the good people here, because I've heard this story before, but I think it's worth repeating, the difference between comic book and comic book.
Oh!
That wasn't a trick question either. Also, he burnt up.
This is important. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay.
I might have forgotten.
All right, teach the children.
Now, if we can be serious for a moment, and you pay attention too.
Paying attention.
People always refer to comic books, and they refer to comic books in print. You'll open up a newspaper and they'll say, there was a comic book convention, or whatever they say. And here's the key part. They usually write it as though it's 2 words, comic book. And you don't know what that does to me. That is so wrong, because if you write comic book as 2 words, it means a funny book. It's a comic book. If you write a mystery, it's a mystery book. If you write a sex novel, it's a sexy book. That's proving that to you. I never want to see you writing comic book as if it's 2 words, which means a funny book. But if you write comic book as 1 word, then it becomes something special. It's a type of book no other book can imitate. It's a comic book. Pictures and what else is, and words. I knew there was something
That's your
else.
part. I got the pictures, you got the words.
Now, is that okay? Did I explain that okay? This is a big crusade, and I want you, anytime you see anybody writing comic book as 2 words, I want you to write them a letter, a threatening letter, if you will, and tell them if they continue, they'll hear from Todd.
Okay, so, and that's quite interesting. So let's talk about your hypocrisy with that, okay?
Hypocrisy?
Hypocrisy.
What has that to do with it?
There used to be a guy...
Now I'm worried. I don't know what he's leading up
There
to.
used to be a guy, and his first name was Stanley Lieber, and then he took the 1 word and he cut it into 2 words.
Actually, it was 3 names. Stanley Martin Lieber. What a gorgeous name. Stanley Martin Lieber. As a little kid, I used to practice writing it. You know, almost like I knew one day I'd write autographs. But it took a long time. Stanley Martin Lieber. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have interrupted.
No, I'm just
I tend to interrupt. I apologize.
You just said take two words, put them together, but you had one word that was together and you took it apart. Well, I don't know if you guys know, Stanley's name was Stanley Lieber. He actually has a brother named Larry Lieber, who's an artist. They did the Spider-Man strip for years, and it was Stanley and Larry Lieber, and they were brothers. You guys probably didn't know it. The brothers were working together. So why did you come up with the stage name, Big Shot?
Oh, I heard it. A tone of definite hostility there. When you make notes, when you make a note, anytime I do a, what do you call this, a panel with you again, there's one person that will not be invited. It's not that we're not still friends, I still like you, don't want to share a panel with you. You're too argumentative. We're getting along so beautifully. We're talking and having a good time and they're loving it. And then you come along with these things that you have to think about and worry. Would you leave?
No.
All right, anyway, about the name.
About your name.
So
Get
what
back
happened
on topic, 94-year-old.
You'll be 94 one day, and you'll remember this. Oh, will you remember? Anyway, so I was writing these comic books under the name Stanley Lieber. That was my name, whenever I had to sign something. And people in those days, in the early days, hated comic books. And I don't blame them, that most of the stories were terrible. The dialogue was infantile. And most of the publishers were like mine, who said to me, don't bother with characterization, don't bother with motivation, just give me action. I want to see a lot of fight scenes, that's all action. That's all the readers want. So I got so embarrassed doing these kind of stories, because I thought someday I'd write the great American novel. And I didn't want to use my name for these stories anymore. So I cut my first name in half, and I said, I'll sign it Stan Lee. Nobody will know it's me. I won't be as embarrassed. However, what happened was, later on, we started getting better comics. People started realizing comics have a value. And I was stuck with the name Stan Lee. I couldn't figure out how to go back to Stanley Lieber without confusing people. Oh, I had made it Stan Lee legally, so it would have been too tough to go back. So I stayed Stan Lee all the time, and somewhere in limbo is that great name, Stanley Martin Lieber, and I'm still trying to figure out how to get a hold of it. And that's the story, a dull story, but those are the kind he asked for. You notice the kind I propose, they're exciting, and you at the edge of your seat, but that's the difference between the two of us.
So, moving on, you talk about names of the characters, right? Why so many character names that have the same first letter and last letter that starts like Peter Parker, Reed Richards? Why so many names like that?
You know, for a man your age, whose brain is still thought to be rather sharp, you should have figured that out.
No.
I hate to admit that I have any failings, but I do not have and never did have a great memory. And it was hard for me to remember the names of all my characters. But if they had the same letter for a first name as a last name, if I could think of Reed, I knew the next name would begin with an R, so it made it easier to think of Reed Richards. So I did that because it made it easier for me to think of the names. And I'm wondering why I'm addressing everything he says when I'm sitting with this pretty young lady and not paying enough attention to her. Would you go read a book or something? Leave us alone.
A comic book.
Yeah, a comic book. All right, go ahead.
Well, I'm interested in you, Todd. I am. Let's take
Oh, see, Stan? See, Stan?
And you and Spider-Man, and here is the creator, but you are certainly a huge, significant, part of that character. Let's talk a little bit about, when you first came onto the Spider-Man team.
Yeah. Look, it was weird to me that when I came on to Spider-Man, I thought John Romita, who had set the template for Spider-Man, was my Norman Rockwell of Spider-Man. So I didn't draw like John Romita Jr. because I didn't like his stuff. I didn't want to draw like John Romita Jr. because of a reverence to him, right? Let me just tell you, any artists out there, if you ever want to be a painter and you go, I want to be like Norman Rockwell, the best you can do if you imitate Norman Rockwell is to be a great Norman Rockwell artist. It's not good for your career. So all you can do as a young kid is try and set yourself away. My simple difference, I think, that I brought to Spider-Man was I thought Stan was part of it. I'm not here to say it was good, bad, or indifferent, but I thought visually it was Spider-Man. And I flipped it. I went, Spider? To me, it was way more interesting to do the Spider part and then come in the man part. Peter Parker was less interesting to me. What was way cooler is when he put the costume on and he jumped out the window and he became the spider. So I go, spiders have big eyes. They're insects. They have the webs. They had gotten rid of the webs. Remember the webs under the armpit?
And you brought the details.
Did go
Too much to draw.
Yeah, I think so. I added some more webbings, and then the one thing I added black. But the one thing too is that I did those webs, right? The webs that now it's weird that they fought me. I am telling you, ladies and gentlemen, they fought me on those webs. And the moment I leave that company, it becomes the status quo and everybody's doing the webs that they fought me on, which is really an odd thing today. But the reason I did the webs, just so everybody knows, was so I could shoot it towards camera and I could create a false sense of volume when I was drawing, because they didn't have a cape. The easiest guys to draw are guys with capes. So I don't know, I was just having fun. Stan will tell you, as an artist, as a writer, you sit in a room for 10 hours a day by yourself. And if you can't entertain yourself, what are you going to do? So I was just doing it, and the sales were going up. This was what was silly. The sales were going up. So.
Oh, I heard that. I just didn't think it was so interesting that it would go for a long time.
I think it's really interesting, and the thing is now you can't even really picture the character, our generation, without those webs and the webbing. So I was like,
Well, the other thing too, Sam Raimi. Anybody see the first couple movies of Spider-Man?
Woo!
Remember my cameos?
the star sitting right here. Sam Raimi and a couple people working there had some of my artwork, and so they brought in some of the actors and stunt people, and they couldn't go into the pose. And so they said, well, go get some double jointed people. And they couldn't do it. And they got the triple jointed people, and they couldn't do it. And eventually they went to, the story they told me was they went to Vegas and got the Cirque du Soleil people, the contortionists, and they still couldn't do it. And the reason was, I didn't give a shit about the anatomy when I was drawing him as Spider-Man, right? It was just look cool. It just looked cool, dudes. So they ended up having to do it CG. That was the only way they could actually get Spider-Man to do some of the things that he wanted him to do. So I don't know. It was just I was making a career. God bless. God bless that it worked out. Stan was always encouraging along the way. He never was insulted by it. And all of a sudden, here we are. And pretty soon,
I'll tell you something about the webs, if I may.
Yes, go ahead. It's your damn panel. Go ahead.
Originally, I gave Spider-Man, Peter Parker, web shooters. He created these little things he wore on his wrist, and when he went like that and pushed a button, the web shot out. Because originally I didn't give him the ability to shoot webs like a real spider. And I liked what I had done. I liked the fact that he had this artificial web that he just hit his finger and it would shoot out, because I could have times when he was out of web fluid and then he'd be in danger. See, now in the stories, he's never out of web fluid. He can shoot those webs forever. So I liked the fact that it wasn't built into his body, but he was a brilliant science student anyway in high school, and he created the way to shoot those webs. However, I'm the only guy who liked that. There was a time that, I forgot his name, he was going to do a Spider-Man movie.
James Cameron.
Jim? Absolutely, you're wonderful. Jim Cameron was going to do Spider-Man. And he had the webbing, what do you call it? It came from his body. It was, there's a word for that. I can't think of it. Organic. Will you take his place? He's wonderful. So Jim Cameron made it organic. And when they finally did the movie, Sam Raimi made it organic or whatever. So he never ran out of web fluid. But if I were doing Spider-Man myself all the time, if I were totally in charge, I would still let him have that little thing that he pushes and the web shoots out. Now the funny thing about this is, everybody knows that the webbing comes out of his body. And yet everybody who wants to imitate Spider-Man goes like this. But he doesn't do that anymore. But whenever I go to a convention or anywhere and people want to take a picture with me and they say, do the Spider-Man thing, and they go like that. So I'm always going like that, but it means nothing because Spider-Man doesn't do that. And that's one of the great mysteries of the Western world.
I took an unexpected turn.
Just so you know, to me, it always was coming out. So I was with you. I wasn't there when it was coming out of his body. To me, he was always touching it. I just needed to make it look cool, so you could shoot it towards camera. Don't be so sensitive.
We have, I don't know how many superheroes. We have Iron Man, we have the X-Men, the Avengers, we have the new one, the Black Panther who's coming along. One of my favorites, I've already done, you can relax, I've already done my cameo for the Black Panther. And all of those, is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Venom? What, is Venom coming out as a movie or no? Is Venom? What's the inside scoop on Venom?
Well, Venom, who created Venom?
Well, you drew Venom for the first
Yeah,
time.
David McFarlane and I are
Did you create Venom?
we created Venom. Yes, we did.
That's why he brought it up. You see, the oh, he is so cagey. What would you like to talk about? We have 100 characters. Gee, maybe we ought to talk about Venom. Well, oh, come to think of it, I think I did. My friends. All right, talk about Venom.
Oh, you talk. You got the inside scoop. You're Mr. Marvel. I'm Image.
No, but this is your panel. You're holding the live microphone. I'm having more fun sitting next to you.
Here's what I will tell you about Venom. So for all you guys, when we created Venom, I came on Spider-Man at 298, right? I only had one condition. Can we get Spider-Man back into the red and blue costume? Because that was Spider-Man to me. Yeah. Spider-Man in the black wasn't Spider-Man. So they said...
Wait, you mean he wasn't the regular Spider-Man anymore when he was Venom? I thought he could go from one to the other.
You're getting old.
Why are you looking at me that way?
Just nod your head. I'm talking to them right now.
Hey, you know, I could go to D.C. and they'd be happy to have me.
Wow.
Image would be happy to have you, but so I'm just trying to get you mad so you quit Marvel so you come to us and work for us. But what the deal was with Venom was that we needed to then issue 300, get the costume off Spider-Man, right? So it was decided we were going to get the costume off so I could draw the blue and the red. And so they said, we'll put it on some other creature and we'll do it. It's a symbiote. That's all I had. It was a symbiote, alien costume.
I've been watching your gestures. I don't know if you're aware, but for the past minute, this was him. I want you to try to talk with your mouth. Just maybe one sentence
He's great.
without this thing, it's distracting them so. They're all turning to each other. Why is he doing that with his arm? He's so frustrated. It's disturbing, it really is. And if you want to have a living working with me on a panel, if you want this to be something we do again, you've got to straighten up and learn a few things. You have to learn to be smooth. Try to be helpful, nobody appreciates it.
As I was saying,
But don't start from the beginning.
I
I
will put the mic in this hand and talk with this head. How about that? That I drew Venom as an alien. I thought he was an alien. And so for 298 and 299, where there were a couple panels of him, he was an alien. And it wasn't until I got the script for 300 that the writer then says, oh, by the way, it's a human. What information I could have used 2 issues ago. So the design of Venom, as big as he is, like to me, it was like a gorilla with the big sort of alien jaw and the big claws. I thought it was supposed to be an alien. I have to tell you right now, this is a happy accident. That if they had given me that information early, that it was going to be Eddie Brock with the black costume, he wouldn't have looked like what he looks like today, which is the look I think the kids like, which is a big hulking monster. It would have just been an average guy in a black uniform. So David Michelini, who's now credited as the co-creator with me, thanks for not getting me the information, because we had a success. We backdoored a success.
He's using the arm again.
Yeah. So, hey, let me ask you all a question here. I've talked to Stan, and I'm not going to steal, because this is Stan's panel. He keeps thinking he's Batman. I'm kind of Robin. Maybe I'm the female Robin.
Why do you pick
Dark Knight.
DC?
So,
Come on.
we did it, but I'm hoping by San Diego I have a big announcement of a Spawn movie, right? So a big announcement. But we won't get into that. But I would like to take a poll, because I've had a chat with Stan about this.
If I don't get a cameo.
Who would like to see a cameo as Stan Lee and Spawn? The movie is going to be a dark R. It's going to be, if here's PG-13, and here's Deadpool, and here's Logan, we're going to be here. It's going to be dark. It's going to be nasty. And I've already talked to Stan. He's already gone for it. But I've actually written it into the script. Is Stan Lee? Picture it right now. You guys have seen all of it, right? Stan Lee is in this building, and it's a rundown building, and you kick open the door, you catch him by surprise, and he's sitting in this chair, and he's dressed in a wife beater shirt. He hasn't shaved for 4 days. He's got a beer in one hand, and he's got a big stogie in the other hand. Now that's just the setup of Stan Lee, because he's always looks nice in his movies. I just want to do that crusty old curmudgeon, old gnarly Stan Lee that you know, that basically what his wife sees in the morning when he wakes up. That's the Stan Lee, the real Stan Lee. So Stan, I want you to come into that movie and really
I'll come in my pajamas.
Yes. And you need to act, because I want you to just be nasty in this movie. It'll be awesome. It'll be awesome.
Well, I'll look too rugged if I don't look as pretty.
No, not with your white beater shirt. You don't get to see the real goods there. So.
The problem is, I don't get roles that are too big in the movies, because everybody is afraid I'll be mistaken for Clark Gable. By the way, did I ever tell you why the Marvel movies make so much money because of my cameo? Did I ever tell you what the cameo has to do with that? Because if I haven't, you should know. and I'm going to tell you, don't interrupt. Let's say you're at a Marvel movie and you're with a date. So you and your girlfriend are sitting watching the movie. All of a sudden, one of you decides you need some popcorn. So you reach down, and she reaches down, and while you're looking at the popcorn, you miss my cameo. Now, the movie ends, and you turn to your girlfriend, or she turns to her boyfriend. I don't want to make it sound like we're only on one side. You turn to each other, and you say, "We missed the cameo." So what do? You go to the box office, you buy two more tickets, and you go back. The Marvel movies make all that money because the cameos are so short that a lot of people miss them. So they have to go back and buy 2 more tickets. And that's the secret, and you're the first people to find out. Let's think what it'll do for sport.
Hey, do you guys have some questions for Todd and Stan? You guys want to line up and we'll go through a few questions here?
Do we have a mic someplace?
We do.
Out in the audience?
Yep, we do.
Perfect.
Let's start over
Where's
here.
everybody running to?
Oh, they're on.
Hi, go ahead.
Hi. We hear a lot of stories about the 60s and the Silver Age. I want to know what it was like when you first started at Marvel when you were still an office boy.
Oh man, how much time do you have? It was really wonderful because we had a small staff. There was John Romita in the office as a staff artist who could do anything, and he did it wonderfully. There was Jack Kirby, who was a freelancer, and he came to the office, and he could do anything, and he did it magnificently. And Jack and John Romita were doing a lot of the stuff. And then Daredevil was done by Bill Everett, who had originally done Submariner. And we just had the greatest people, but none of us knew that we were creating anything that someday people would ask questions about them years later. We were just making a living, that was it. And it was fun. We had a small bullpen with just about 6 people in it. There was a layout man, there was a proofreader. When I wrote my little editorials, I tried to make it seem as if we had a big bustling bullpen and everybody was kidding around and running in and out. I wanted to give an image to the readers, but actually it was just a few of us in there sweating away for almost no money per page. But we loved doing what we did because we loved comics. And I'm sorry I couldn't make that answer more interesting, but you'd have to have a whole history book for me to tell you everything that happened in those days.
That was perfect, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, over here. We have a question over here.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Joe. I'm from Seattle, and I was wondering, what's your favorite book that you made? Your favorite comic book you made?
My favorite comic book of any that I've made? Wow.
Those are tough questions, right?
I don't even remember all the stories. But there was a Silver Surfer that I wrote that I liked very much, where he philosophized a lot about the conditions on Earth and why people who live on such a magnificent planet that has fresh air and water and food and everything you could want, why they hate each other and have wars, and what's the matter with the human race? Are we crazy? And I was able to do a lot of philosophizing. So I know that's not the answer you expected, but I think that particular Silver Surfer issue is probably one of my favorite.
Thank you. That's a great question.
My name's Greg, I'm from Seattle, and I just want to
From Seattle. He's from Seattle. We're in Seattle, and he's from Seattle.
It's
Go
ironic.
figure.
Just wanted to ask you guys if you prefer Gwen Stacy to Mary Jane, or if Gwen Stacy lived, do you think he would have ended up with Peter Parker?
Gwen Stacy didn't live. Now, the reason I ask that, I keep seeing these girls appearing on the covers. Are they both alive, or is only one of them alive?
Well, there's Spider-Gwen, so that's like a new character. And so
What do you say?
But just Stan, going back to like...
Just going back.
Spider-Gwen.
If you could only date one of them, if you could only pick one, did you like...
To tell you the truth, I do not know which girl I would have made the one for Peter, because I loved them both. I loved Gwen. I loved the fact that her father was a police chief. I loved the fact that she was so sweet and loving, beautiful. I loved MJ because she was kind of fiery and had that great personality and was such fun. I loved one panel that I wrote, and I'm sorry they didn't use it in the movie, but Aunt May had been wanting Peter Parker to meet Mary Jane for the longest time. She had been saying to him, "There's this nice girl that lives next door, you ought to meet her." Now, no teenage boy wants to meet a nice girl. So he kept avoiding it all the time. And at the end of one story, he opens the door, and there she is standing there. And she says, "Face it, Tiger, you hit the jackpot." And oh man, she looked so great. They should have used that panel in the movie. And what am I talking about? I don't know which one I'd have had him end up with. Probably MJ, because I think the death of, what's the other one's name? The death of Gwen's father was so dramatic. And as he was dying, he said, "Look after her, Peter." And Peter realized that he knew Peter was Spider-Man and had never told anybody, And it goes on and on. So, I don't know what, I think I would have made it Mary Jane.
Thank you. Great question.
Todd, what was your take?
But that's the mood I'm in now. Then I might have thought of something different.
Todd, same question. So no.
Well, by the time I get onto the scene, right, Stacy Gwen's gone. So there was only Mary Jane. What I did artistically was Mary Jane was a supermodel by the time I picked her up. And it was interesting that people gave me credit for doing some stuff to Mary Jane. All I did was turn her into a supermodel, right? Supermodels have certain equipment at home. One of them that they have is actually a curling iron, right? So all you ladies, you have curling irons and you have makeup. It was always weird to me they hadn't updated her even though she was a supermodel. All you had to do is look at magazines. So for me, I just dolled her up. I mean, ultimately, I've got a beautiful wife. I just sort of patterned her after my own wife, and I made her sort of super sexy. No, it's true, all right? It's true. I got to put up on the screen. She's awesome. But I just made her sexy. They're called supermodels for a reason, and because of that, when they were married, they had a good time. So I'm fond of Mary Jane because that was the relationship I got to deal with. So.
Thank you. Yes.
Stan, you remind me of my father, who's 95, and throughout your career, you've always done and created characters that make us want to be extraordinary people, even though we're ordinary people. And what is some of the, like a charity that you enjoy to give to, or you would recommend for us to be, extraordinary?
I really don't know of any, but I'm a little annoyed that you say that I remind you of your 95-year-old. Because you see, I'm a young, youthful 94. If you think of me as a 95-year-old, it means you're thinking of me as older than I am. And now I'm concerned. Did I seem a little shaky when I walked on stage? I don't know. So you ruined the evening for me. No, seriously, I really don't know of any such organization. There must be some, and you can probably Google it, because you can Google anything in the whole wide world.
Thank you. In that case, what's a no prize? You guys used to give those away.
What's a no prize?
Yeah.
What's a no prize?
This is a good one. This is a good one.
Oh. You'll find this hard to believe, but I'm the kind of guy that occasionally made mistakes when I wrote stories. I'd write the wrong name for a character, I'd have them live in the wrong place. I don't remember well, and I was always in a hurry writing. And I'd get mail all the time from readers. Hey Stan, don't you know the name of your own character? It's blah, blah, blah. So I felt I ought to reward these readers for their keen sight and their insight and for spotting those errors. But I had a very cheap publisher who wouldn't spend any money. So the only way I could think to reward people who found an error we made was to send them an envelope that said, congratulations, you're another lucky winner of a Mighty Marvel No Prize, or something of that sort. And they would open up the envelope, of course, and it was empty. It was a no prize.
So I got one of those in the mail, and I was so excited. And I asked the same question, what's a no prize? And you open it up, and it's no prize.
But you got recognition.
But I kept that envelope though, which is the funny thing. You keep
You know when I come to, what do you call this again? Not Seattle. When I come to it never fails.
Am I back in the good books now with that area?
It never fails. But somebody will come up with me and say, would you sign my no prize? I've kept this for 40 years. And people have saved those no prize envelopes. Anyway, that's what a no prize is.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's go over here.
Hi, I'm Troy from Silverdale, Washington, and my personal favorite Stan Lee cameo would have to be the strip club DJ from Deadpool. I think a lot of people would agree with me. I was just wondering what Stan and Todd's favorite were.
It would have been my favorite one too if we had shot it in the strip club. Unfortunately, we didn't. We shot it in a studio.
Todd, do you have...
Did you ask my favorite? It's very simple. My favorite is the one where I'm talking to Thor in a bar, and Thor is drinking a very strong drink, and I asked for a sip, and he said, this is too strong for you, you're an ordinary mortal. But I insist, so Thor gives me that drink, and the next scene, I'm being dragged out by some people. I'm almost unconscious. Now you're saying, why is that Stan's favorite one? And the reason is, and I'm surprised you haven't thought of it yet, it's 2 scenes. All my other cameos are 1 scene. I'm hoping this will give them the idea to do more 2-seaters than a 3-seater.
And for that cameo that I talked about in Spawn, it's kind of a sequel to that, right? The one where you're a drunk, I'm just going to continue that acting into my movie. You get to be the drunk in mine. It'd be awesome. Yeah.
That's fine. It may sound funny. I can hear what they say and what you people say, but when you use the mic, to my ears it sounds like woo, 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 woo. If he takes the mic away,
then they can't hear me.
But you're not saying anything that's that important. I'm the important one.
Let's go over here.
Go ahead.
Okay, we have time for just one more question, and this is from a very special guest.
Hi, Stan. This isn't really a question, but you invited me and my son here after doing my pregnancy announcement 2 years ago at Comic-Con. My husband is the Green Beret that was killed when my son was 2 months old in Afghanistan saving his team. And thanks to you, I met him. And Comic-Con was one of our things that we did every year. And you inspired him to be such an amazing man. And you gave me the love of my life. So thank you.
Young lady a few hours ago, and she showed me a photograph that we had taken a couple of years ago at one of the conventions when you were pregnant with your baby. And you told me what happened to your husband. And I gotta tell you, I almost was not in a position or condition to even want to come to this panel after we had that talk. It's just such a bad thing. And I think it's wonderful that you carried on the way you have. And it's one of the really horrible things about life, that there is so much injustice and so much tragedy, and there's nothing we can do about it. And you had a husband who was a hero in special forces. That just deserves all the applause that you could get. Bless you.
All right.
Everybody's here supporting you.
All right. And given that is going to be true for all of us, and someday, sadly, this great man sitting next to it, let's do the biggest selfie shot, and let's beat Ellen DeGeneres by tenfold. So I've got my camera. Come on, me and you, we're going to stand here. Somebody pull up the lights, and we're going to get these people, we're going to get the biggest selfie that we can possibly get. Selfie. You stand here, you stand here. And we're going to do it right here. Ready? Turn around. A selfie goes the other way. A selfie goes the other way. That's what we're talking about. Ready? One. I'll put my camera on. 1, 2, 3. There we go. The biggest selfie. We're putting it up on Ellen DeGeneres' website. Thank you, everybody. Stand by.
He is better at ending the panel than anybody I know. We've been talking and floundering. He knew just what to do. And he's gone. Where is he? There he is.
I think there's one more thing to do, guys. Excelsior!